We're here with Matt McGachy from Vox&Hops and Cryptopsy, a legend amongst legends for sure, in both the metal and the podcasting scene. So we're super stoked to have you on Brewtal, man. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm super stoked to be here tonight. When I saw your podcast pop up, I was like, yes, another metal and craft beer podcast. I love it. Let's just keep spreading the word. More and more of us, more podcasts, start a podcast. If people are listening, start a metal and beer podcast so that we can all hang out and challenge people to get more into metal and get more into craft beer. Challenge yourself to push your creative thresholds, whether it be for the fine art of beer or what music you're listening to.
Hell yeah, man.
First, I fully support this message.
We're going to use that as the new intro for the show there. Sponsored by Matt. Yeah, dude. Well, I mean, let's get into it. What are you drinking today for this here episode? Are you drinking anything?
I am. I have two special beers. I don't know which one I want to go with, but I have this one right here, which is Kanawaki Brewing Company's Cryptopsy, the Cryptopsy collab, the Pilsner Supremacy. It's a New World Pilsner, so it's a Bohemian yeast Pilsner, which has been double dry hop with mosaic hops. So it's a bastardized version of a classic. It's a very avant-garde beer. It's only 4.8%, and we got a lot of shit for that. Cryptopsy did because we're an extreme band. We're supposed to have an extreme beer, but I came back with the retort that Cryptopsy is an avant-garde band more than anything. We do things out of the ordinary, and this is most definitely that. So this is option A. I'll probably drink both of these, but this is probably what I'm going to start with. And then I'm very stoked about this. I got my hands on the very first canned Brewtal North America brew.
Ooh. Nice.
Which is not for sale yet. All the beers go on sale the week of the 21st to the 25th of June. This is Huitième Péché, which is a contract brewer here in Quebec, which is why the beer is already ready. And they've been teamed up with Incandescence, which is the first time I've nailed that name properly. Every time that I've said it, I've massacred it for some reason. It was a word that some words you just can't get your mind around. This is really cool. It's called Ascension. It's an imperial stout with pecans and hazelnuts. 10% and Huitième Péché, yeah. So they're a contract brewery, and to get the brew out on time, they had to jump into Brasserie Générale, which is a sick brewery in Quebec City, to get this brew finished on time with the crazy constraints of being a contract brewer. Luckily, it's a stout, so it can sit around for a while and it will survive no matter how many weeks it's there. How about you guys? I'm going to crack this. I'm going to start with Cryptopsy.
I was going to say, First of all, I'm very glad you have a Pilsner for this because almost, I would say 80%, 90% of our episodes, I usually have like the lighter stuff. I will say, unfortunately for this, I'm actually sticking to water and juice because I actually got a stomach problem going on. So going sober for the one episode where we interview Vox&Hops, I was just like, the timing of this is terrible, but I won't be participating in any craft beer. But Arie,
you gotta take care of yourself. Take care of yourself is very important. To listen to yourself and to. Yes. So good to see. It smells like melon.
Ooh. Yeah, it's a nice color to it too.
It's gorgeous. It's Drew, their brewer, is fantastic. I was with him yesterday. It was awesome.
Hell yeah,
that's fantastic. Yeah, Arie, though. Arie, you have some. You were texting me earlier today about what you had. You didn't name it, so it's still a surprise to me. Yeah, what do you got there?
Yes, to Todd's point, where Matt, you're drinking the Cryptopsy Pilsner, but you also got the stout. That's pretty much like our dynamic on the show. So I've got a stout here too. I've got a 2020 Bourbon County. So I actually forgot that I had this in my closet because, real quick story. There's really no correlation between like why I get this and what I drink it on, but I normally drink it. My dad passed away 5 years ago. So like I would drink it on the day that he passed away as like a little like commemoration for him. Even though like that's not what he would normally drink. I don't know why. Like I was like, well, this is a special beer. And I was like, this is something, special, but he was more into like Irish Reds and whatnot. So I stuck with that this year, and I was like, well, this is perfect. So it's been aging for a couple months, and it's just the normal Bourbon County. And those of you who are not familiar with it, it's a barrel aged bourbon stout or coffee stout, I should say, from Goose Island, which is from Chicago, Illinois. So I'm really excited for this. And I had a Carlsberg earlier that I chugged for this hot sauce community that I'm a part of now. I know that you've got a hot sauce. One of your best friends does it, and I can see you got the Heartbeat hot sauce. One of our good friends, shout out Ben, the Dr. Proctor. He has a YouTube channel where he does like really hot challenges, and he does hot sauce reviews and stuff. So he got me into this, and they have a thing where you have to like chug a beer of like and people chug like the craziest stuff. Like one person did a Dogfish Head's 120-minute IPA. It makes no sense. So like I'm over here just like the lightest thing I could possibly have. And I was like, I'm following up with this. I'm gonna be fine.
Oh yeah. I've only had that beer once before, and it was given to me by Dallas from who's the dude that runs the Riot Room in Kansas City. He's an amazing human. Anytime you play there, if you're a little bit into craft beer, you end up spending your entire night. And the way that the room is set up is that there's like this big round bar, and Dallas like stands in the middle of it. And he goes, "You tried this?" And no matter what, if you say yes or no, he like pours you this like little half glass, and that you go through your entire night like that. And he gifted me I can't remember what year it was. It was probably like a 2016 or something. It wasn't the year that I was infected, because one of those years were infected, but it wasn't that one. It was delicious. And I drank it with my brother-in-law when my nephew was born, actually. I came back from that tour, and he was born while I was on that tour, and we enjoyed that together when I came back home from that tour.
That's awesome. Well, let's before we get into the meat and potatoes, if you will, we always say Brewtal on the show anytime we want to cheers. So Brewtal, Matt, thanks for coming on.
I love that you guys are brutal, and everything I do is brutal. I know where I got inspired from Brewtal. I totally got inspired by Decibel Magazine. So that's definitely where I started using that. Hypothetically, we're heavily inspired. I owe them a sandwich, as Justin would say. So.
I don't think we've really talked about it, because from my recollection, Todd came to me with this idea, but it was originally about hip hop, and
really?
Like that was going to be the thing, is like the hop was going to be like the hop for the beer, and because we're both really big into rap and hip hop like that. But I was like, dude, I cannot talk about that nearly to the same extent as I can about metal. So then it just kind of transformed into Brewtal, and I think, you know, it's like when you hear that, you're just like, that's it. Like that's the epitome of what it is. And so I don't know, like, do you have any insight onto that, Todd? I think it just kind of like evolved over time.
Behind the name, it was just, I mean, you know, it's something you say for metal. It's such a perfect pairing with beer, craft beer in particular. And I was like, man, like we always talk about these two things all the time. Like, let's just start recording, you know, and talk about it, just like a conversation. Amazing. That's just how it started.
Amazing. And there's so many. There's just like, so there's Brewtal beer or something. There's definitely a brewery in Australia that has Brewtal written the way that we use it. And then I just did an episode with Brutally Speaking podcast.
Yeah, saw that. Yeah.
It's so interesting that we're all inspired by the same thing, and then we all use the same word, but we're all different. I like that.
I think also to piggyback off that, there was because we're from Pennsylvania originally, and Pittsburgh. Someone in Pittsburgh definitely had a Brewtal Fest at one point. I don't think they do it anymore, but it's a collective thing. Like it's great. I'm glad that everyone is like, you know, like you said, we're all on the same page. We're all just trying to promote the same thing. And I know when we started doing research for the show, because I was personally not aware of Vox&Hops until like one of my mentors, Jeremy Enns, he's actually from Canada. I think he's actually from Quebec initially, but he runs a podcasting firm called Counterweight Creative, and his what he does is do health and wellness podcast. And so he's always like saying when you're starting a podcast to really look like in your niche and see like who's doing what. And Vox&Hops was the first one that came up. You're like, oh, this is super cool. Cryptopsy's dope. And then started listening to it. And, you know, the rest is history. You do a fantastic job with the show, and the guests that you get are awesome. Absolutely. And the insights, you know, the beer, just very, very well produced. And so this was really cool to be able to sit down and talk with you about all the good stuff, the metal, the beer.
My pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Let's dig in.
Yes.
Honestly, I want to start off with this. I was actually going to bury this question, but, you know, for you covering so much craft beer with the podcast, what trends this year and maybe in the future are you most excited about within craft beer?
I'm really into the whole resurgence of lagers and crispies. I think that's something that's really taken off here in Quebec a lot. But that's really because I think that the evolution of the craft beer, the person that's buying the beer, the craft beer enthusiast, has evolved as well. So everyone starts off with the same beers, the sweet, sugar-filled beers. And then we think, oh, well, this beer's not that bad. You know, you remember that first beer that we had. It was some malty, heavy, disgusting cereal-forward, big brewery, cheap, corn-filled brew, and it doesn't, you know, it didn't connect with us. And all of a sudden you have a hazy IPA, and it tastes juicy and tropical and like mangoes, but it's sweet as hell and full of sugar. So it really, really hooks you in, and you want another one, and you want another one. Same page, different. The stout game, the whole pastry stouts that are going on, which is basically diabetes in a bottle, but with a sneaky high ABV. So it's exciting to play with, and it's dangerous, and you share it. That's exciting. So all these people get hooked into craft beer that way. And then as time goes on, they just want to drink something crushable and have like 5 of them, 6 of them, and then not wake up feeling like garbage the next day. So I think that is definitely something that's happening, that will keep happening. That's just going to keep soaring, and just more and more, because a lot of these styles that are coming over here are basically stuff that happens in Europe because it's made in this tiny town, right? So it's this grain and this hops because it comes from that region. So that's exciting, and people are trying to like get that strain of yeast that they've been using for so many years. And that's another thing that's interesting too in the craft beer scene that's going on, is it's like this rotating, never having a flagship thing in the craft beer industry. It must be extremely tiring for the brewery, versus back in the day when you went to a brewery, it was that beer, and they've been working on that beer for X amount of years, and then they just tweaking the smallest little tweaks. Versus nowadays, everything is just change. So that's going to keep happening because that's what the modern human wants. We have no attention span, and we have no respect for fine tuning things anymore. But I also think sessionable beers are going to come in. That's falling into the same low ABV beers is something that we're going to see a lot more of. Well done, well executed, with proper feeling. There's going to be a lot more non-alcoholic beers that are going to be coming out that taste like beer. And it's all falling into the fact that people want to find balance while enjoying the finer things in life, such as a craft beer versus water, let's say. So those would be the 3 things. So it's like sessionable beers, non-alcoholic, and the crispy lagers, the return to the roots of what beer used to be. Beer was meant to replace water because the water was poisonous, right? So they had to create something that people could be hydrated and drink a lot of without feeling like crap the next day.
I actually didn't know that. I learned
I didn't either. That's a really cool fact, which makes sense because I know like a lot of the times in Europe, there was a beer that I had in, I'm going to contradict what I just said. I had in Buffalo, but it was inspired. It was a Rambler from, I think the brewery's called Broken Chain in Buffalo, but like on the side, they talk about how the cyclists like doing like Tour de France or something like that, they would get handed beer because like it would have the electrolytes and the things that they needed to keep going, as opposed to getting so like so overly hydrated and just feeling like garbage from all the water. So like, there's a lot of cool things that beer can do. It's just everything in moderation. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And you're seeing all these sport teams in Europe now getting sponsored by non-alcoholic beer companies. It's interesting. It's, there's some good things that come from hops, but there's a whole lot of bad things when there's alcohol involved. But it's so fun and delicious.
It really is. Yeah, and to your point with that, not the NA, but one of the beers that Todd had on a recent episode was the beer for the Austin Major League Soccer team. So like you're seeding a lot of these companies that you wouldn't think would get involved. It's almost kind of like in the fast state, at least in my mind, like whenever I think of Red Bull, I either think of like the bar or like extreme sports. Yeah. And like they have such a huge market, but you're like, well, this is an energy drink. But like now it's like, well, that's a beer, and they're doing like amazing things. And you get to do things like the Brewtal North America, which, you know, could we maybe talk a little bit about that? Can you give us a little bit of backstory?
Absolutely. Yeah. It was a crazy idea. In February of this year, I was doing a sober February. So I like to approach content for the podcast in a project aspect. So from November or late October up until February, I was planning, organizing, setting up interviews for Sober February, where I sat down with artists who were sober, no longer drank for either health issues or because they are an alcoholic, non-alcoholic brewers. I had a sober coach that goes out on tour with artists to help them stay sober and to talk them through, help them cope with being on tour when you are an alcoholic or have substance abuse issues. I even had a doctor of science, a cool dude that played a session bass for Ahab, the Doom band. He's actually PhD in nutritional science. So we talked exactly about what happens when you ingest alcohol and what the negative effects are. And it's a very heavy episode. If anyone wants to go listen to that, it's not good to drink, but it's fun, as I said before. So right as that was wrapping up, I was like, what is going to be the next project? And I was realizing that this summer there would be probably no shows, probably no festivals, no metal festivals. Another summer like last summer where we just didn't have those occasions to connect with our friends, with fellow like-minded individuals that enjoy the same things we do, whether it be at a metal show, a metal fest, or a beer fest, which is something that I really enjoy. Here in Quebec, if you go to a beer fest, there's a bunch of metalheads walking around, so I think that's awesome. So I decided to create something that would help artists, bands, and breweries interact with their fans together, and also create something unique, something tangible, something that a band could give their fans an experience and a way to express themselves creatively in a time where you can't go and do it face to face. You can't perform. You can't do that. So I love doing collaborative brews. That's really where my brain is at. I had the lucky chance to release Vox&Hops in November with the great humans at Overhop Canada. It did very well. It sold out very quickly. It's a double dry hop New England IPA. Killer brew. They just brought it back recently. So I was in this mindset of collabs. So I was like, let's do that. Let's pair Vox&Hops alumni, the past guests of the podcast, with metal breweries from around North America. And this was the initial thought. And then I was like, what if we did like a live stream to go with it, and everyone could just enjoy the beers during this live stream? And then I realized that was very complicated. So I settled on doing some little mini docs to cover the creative process of that. So that's what happened. And I initially only wanted 10. That was my goal. Let's get 10. And I hit up 2-3 friends that I have in the industry that I've had on the podcast. The first pairing, that was really the hardest part, was to find people that fit together, because not all breweries and bands fit together. And the breweries and the bands had to be from the same state, the same area, because I wanted the bands to go to brew day. I wanted them to be there canning. I wanted them to feel like this was important and a part, that they were a part of this project. So that's what I did. So I hit up Le Fermentor, who were episode number 3 of Vox and Hops, and I paired them with episode number 1 of Vox and Hops, the agonist, Danny Marino. And I wrote them, I put them in a group together. I'm like, actually, no, I always hit up the brewery first because that was the big obstacle. I'm like, is the brewery interested in doing this? And if I got a yes, then I would rope in the band. So I wrote them both in and I was like, is this crazy? Is this an idea that's going to work? And they were like, yeah, this is sick. Let's do this. So I wrote them, and then I wrote Broken Goblet and Half because I knew they were friends already. So that just was like, yeah, let's do it. And then I just kept going and I kept going. And being from Quebec, we are a metal mecca, and having interviewed a lot of Quebec artists because they're my friends, and it's, I have a long list of Quebec Vox and Hops alumni. And I know that there's a lot of breweries that are metal themed or have metal members of their crew. I just asked them all. So very quickly I surpassed my 10, and then I just kept going. And now I have 22 collabs coming out the week of June 21st to the 25th, and it's insane. So it's been a lot of fun. The match had to be right. There's many meetings that didn't go right, where I paired a brewery with a band and it just didn't fit. But that's okay. That's life. That's what life is about. And this is about relationships, and it had to fit. It had to click, like anything, like making a band. So it's like making a baby, making a beer. So people had to both be into it and want to do the same positions to get the same outcome. But I'm stoked, and this is one of them. The can art was a very big project in itself. The actual art section of it is this dude named Philip Ivanovic. He's a Vox and Hops alumni. He does artwork for a bunch of killer artists such as Cryptopsy, Augury, a bunch of other ones locally and across the globe. So I really just wrote him, and I was like, I just want the Vox and Hops head dude there, like just have him crawling out of North America, and then he does this, There was a few back.
It looks amazing.
He was like, do you want it to have wings? I'm like, fuck yeah, I do. So that happened. And then the actual logo of it is Andrew Tremblay, the guy that designs all of the Vox and Hops brand logo. So that is the key piece. And then the layout of the can is my friend Jeannie Bond that did the whole layout. So it's like everyone that's involved in this is a part of my family. It's very interesting to have so many people working together for such a cool project. And then we got sponsors on board. It's just crazy.
That's cool. Awesome.
Luc from Yakima Chief Hops is a Vox and Hops alumni. He's a huge metalhead from here in Montreal. He is one of the top dudes at Yakima Chief Hops. And he messaged me because he had picked this beer up. And I was like, yeah, that's good, Chris. I'm like, I'm actually doing this now. And he's like, oh, well, cool. We should have a meeting and see how I can help you. So they jumped in. They gave each brewery 10 kilos of hops for being a part of Brewtal North America, which is a lot if you've ever seen boxes of hops. And then Heartbeat Hot Sauce, who are the sponsor of Vox and Hops from at the moment. I've known him forever. A good friend of mine. We grew up playing metal together. Also a Vox and Hops alumni. I knew that he rebranded sauces for other projects because I asked him about it during our interview, and the Agonist had one for one of their tours that didn't happen because of the pandemic, but I knew that he did this, so I pitched him the idea, and hence how we have these super sick
nice
Scorpion Brewtal North America rebranded hot sauces. And he sent out 48 of these to all the breweries that are involved in Brewtal North America. You can't buy these. It's like, this is a giveaway. This is something that we're giving to the fans, the people that come and pick up the beers. 8 of them are for the band, for the staff, and then 40 are for the people that are coming out. So massive shout out to everyone that helped me do this. It's been crazy. Have to give it to my wife, producer of the podcast, Jessica, helping me orchestrate and think these ideas through. The mini docs would never be possible without the help of Chris Kells of The Agonist. That first meeting with the film author on The Agonist, I was like, I'm going to do mini docs. And he was like, okay. And then I didn't know how I was going to do it. I had the idea. I was going to figure it out. So he called me the next day and he's like, how are you going to do these? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to ask for help from the Vox and Hops community. And he was like, I want to help you. And he's a video director. He's extremely talented. So thank God he jumped on, but he's working like an animal right now to get all these mini docs together, and tasting the beers and watching everyone enjoy the beers is really what I'm looking forward to.
That's so cool to hear about that. So cool that Arie's dog is very excited.
I apologize. Yeah, Luna says hello,
no, it's okay.
Everyone. No, that's truly amazing, and the fact that it is, it's so close to happening, and I mean, there's a lot of behind the scenes happenings going on that like you just don't really think about, and that's the same thing with podcast or just making an album, going on tour. Like you see all the glamorous side of it, you see the final product and it looks fantastic, but you don't see like the long hours that go into it, the back and forth, the failed meetings. I mean, that whole package is going to be so sick. We're hoping to maybe get our hands on some of them. I'd love to get the Brand of Sacrifice one, but I know that's only in Canada.
That's up in Canada, yeah. I'm really excited that they're involved. Third Moon Brewing, that they're paired with, is one of Canada's top new breweries. I think they're number 5 on Rate Beer's new breweries in the world, which is just insane. I did number 3 and number 5. There was 2 in Quebec, Ontario, that Saint-Gambaro and them that were on that list. I can't remember. I feel like Third Moon was number 5. And Bevo's super cool, their brewer. I've known that he's a metalhead for a long time because we were communicating before they even opened. But to have him do it and be involved, and he's actually doing a double batch, which is a lot of beer for Brand of Sacrifice, is going to be really sick.
I was going to say, leading up to this, like, it's, we're in June right now, so it's coming up. Just where's your head at with it? Like the official thing?
I'm in love with it. I'm still pushing. I'm really lucky. My main issues and like my role of this was to get everyone 100. Is this happening? Can you get the beer out during this time? So leading up to me announcing, the days before the announcements was probably the most hectic time, trying to get everyone on board 100%. But it worked. It worked. Everyone, but a lot of people, breweries know how to make beer. They know how to sell beer. It's their job. So if they're going to make my beer or make someone else's beer or their own beer, they got to sell beer. So that was the hardest part. But that's the fun thing about collabs. If you come with like an idea in a beautiful package with a name and with thing that you can hype, you're going to get a collab. It's just a matter of presenting the perfect package to them, because they got to sell beer anyways, if they can make the time for you. But I gave them 4 months headway too. That's another secret.
Do you also mind just going a little in depth behind who Cryptopsy is paired with? Because I think that's an interesting story there. Because I read their headline on Instagram, and it was like one of the first native to Canada creating.
They're one of the first breweries on the native territory. So right outside of Montreal is a native territory called Kanawake, and my friend Drew is not native, but his partners are, and that's how we ended up getting the brewery there. But they had to create the first liquor license to brewing license, because it didn't exist yet. So as cool, it's very, very cool but there's some limitations. He can't distribute his beer. You have to go there to buy it. It's a very strange situation because they're in Quebec, they're in Canada, but they have their own set rules. But he is probably one of the most exciting, hyped up, just on the cusp of being the coolest brewery in Quebec. I was with him yesterday telling him this, and he's all, how people are. They're like, no, I don't think so. But he's too modest, but he's killer. Like, this is so damn good. And all the haze that he's been doing is so good. So when we created this beer, he came up with the idea. He hit me up. He just wrote me via Messenger, said Cryptopsy. And I was like, hell yeah, let's do it. Because I was already on the crispy train last summer. My guitarist, Chris Donaldson, doesn't dislike Crispies, but he's a huge hop head. So he wants hazies. Like, he would have loved to get Cryptopsy a hazy. So hence we double dry hopped it with Mosaic to find like a sort of balance, which made it really cool. So this time around, I pitched Drew. I said we could just rebrand Cryptopsy to be a part of Brewtal North America and just throw it in a can with the other artwork. And he was like, no, let's make a new beer. And I was like, okay, let's make a new beer. And then I was like, I have this, like, we have these, this is what Cryptopsy do. We play a show, we get back into the bus or the bandwagon, and we make up stupid beer collab ideas based upon we have like 20 of them. So I went through that list, and one of my ones that I was really excited about, and I know that Drew can do well because he's so good at hazies, and Chris wanted a hazy. So we have a song called Cold Hate, Warm Blood. So we're doing Cold Haze, Warm Blood, and it's an 8.5% double New England with blood orange.
Nice.
That's awesome.
It's going to be massive. It's going to be juicy. It's going to be simply amazing. I'm very excited to taste it. It's getting brewed very soon, tomorrow actually, and we'll be canning it the week of 21st and 25th.
Just in time to keep the freshness for the release. That's awesome. Yeah. Segueing between the podcast and Cryptopsy, I didn't notice this until like I kind of binged Cryptopsy stuff the last couple of days because it's been so long since I've listened to you guys, and I noticed the at the end of the Vox&Hops intro, you have a quote. I believe this comes, or I'm sorry, it's the I warn you, what you're about to hear is very violent and disturbing indeed. And that's also from the opening track from the Book of Suffering 1, correct?
That's correct. And the story behind the intro of Vox&Hops is Chris Donaldson. I went to his house. I had already interviewed episode 1 with Danny from The Agonist at this point, probably a few days before that. And I knew this was like in early August 2018. And I knew that I needed an intro, but I didn't know what I wanted. And I wanted it to be like a medley of everything that I had done, like Cryptopsy and past bands. So I had made this thing I guess I was doing Reaper. I was probably already set up in Reaper at the time. And I brought this to Chris and presented it to him because Chris is a producer. He produces all of Cryptopsy stuff, the Grid Studios here in Montreal. He's amazing. He did the new Shadow Tent. Just killer. He's awesome. So I present this idea to him, and he's extremely comfortable with telling me that things suck. So he was like, your idea is fucking garbage. He's like, how about we do something like this? And that's what he did. So he blended together the beginning of Cryptopsy's self-titled 2 Pound Torch into I Warn You, what you're about to hear. And he picked that up. That's like from some weird paranormal something for the track Detritus. And then the beer pour is seriously just something that I took from YouTube. But
yeah.
But then I've like reused all those elements in different ways, and it's sort of like has tied in, and that is the Vox&Hops soundscape. I think it's interesting.
No, that's awesome. It plays very, very well. And it was just one of those things I was listening to. I was like, wait a minute, I've definitely heard like this before. Oh, yeah. And I told my uncle I would plug this in if I could. And I don't know if you know Sonny Lombardozzi.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so he's been working with Chris at the Grid and Flo for A Rise from Worms. So I was like, dude, I'm interviewing Matt later with my buddy Todd. I was like, and Sonny was like, I don't know if he actually knows about like A Rise from Worms or not. So I was like, I got to plug that in just a little bit. I know they're waiting for management.
I think I've heard some stuff. Chris always likes to show me stuff. And I think because they've been working on this for quite some time.
Yeah.
Before the pandemic hit. And I think when we went up to right before the pandemic hit, we were in a cottage writing in the woods, cabin in the woods, writing new material. And I feel like he showed me some stuff in that project. Shout out to Sonny.
Yeah. Good old Uncle Sonny. I really want to hear it. He's like,
it is very funny because when you sent me the email and your last name was there, I was like, the thought was there. You must be related.
Well, it's funny because normally when people see my last name, they have it totally wrong. But like anyone that's in the metal community, they're like, "Oh yeah, Sonny." I'm like, "Yeah, we actually are related."
Amazing.
But yeah, not to turn to myself by any means, but yeah, can we talk about, do you want to lead us off there, Todd, for what we got with Cryptopsy? And
I feel like so many other interviews with you have done just your history with it, but and I actually was listening to one about you don't quite know what the plans are for the future quite yet, but just where are you guys at on any new music? Are you kind of dabbling?
It's mostly finished. The record musically, it's finished. The body of the album is finished. We just have to add all the fine tuning to it now. So with Chris being a very busy studio, we got to book some time there. We're talking about hypothetically in the fall getting in there, tracking it out, and then we'll eventually be able to release it on the label, which we signed to, that I can't talk about. And I've been saying that for 16 months, and that's really fun. But it is going to come out, and the material is very fresh. It's very extreme. It's a dark, technical, 100% Cryptopsy, which I think is awesome. Cryptopsy is always an evolving machine, but it definitely falls into the realm of what Cryptopsy encompasses. We're not trying to push things too outside of the thing, but we're always a little bit odd and avant-garde, of course. But it's definitely not going to shock people in a bad way. Everyone's going to be stoked when they hear this new material. It's very exciting. Chris really pushed himself and outdid himself on the material I've heard.
And so spinning off of that, awesome. This is my only like past question. We're just, curious, sort of when you came into the band, like what was that like taking over for Lord Worm and going into his shoes? And
it was crazy. It was horrible. I definitely wasn't. It's not that Mark Wahlberg rockstar movie where I was the biggest Cryptopsy fan in the world, and then I ended up being in Cryptopsy. I really just stumbled into becoming a death metal singer because I wasn't a death metal singer. I was a Mike Patton influenced rock singer that had Broadway training, and I had a singing teacher that her goal for me was to become a Cirque du Soleil vocalist. That was her goal. I should have listened, but so I always liked extreme things. It just kept getting heavier and heavier. Evolution of my listening fell into my first Montreal band, 3 Mile Scream. That band recorded with Donaldson, got the Cryptopsy gig via that. And I was not ready. I was not an extreme vocalist yet. So it took me a few years on it, but I went in there and I really did my best. The Unspoken King was horribly received. I think that it was definitely ahead of its time. It's not a perfect record by any means, but there are some really cool songs on it. I hadn't listened to it in years, and just, I want to say about 3-4 weeks ago, I put it on just to see. And there's still some cringy moments, but there's some very interesting moments. It's definitely not a Cryptopsy record, but it's definitely an interesting record that I think had it come out, because it came out in 2008. So that's 13 years ago at this point. There's a lot of bands that are doing a lot of stuff that's on that now. So Cryptopsy was once again ahead of its time. So
I was going to say,
but definitely not ready. It was rough.
I actually vividly remember when that album was released because I had actually never heard of y'all before then. And just everyone was, of course, it was a crowd divided on who liked it, who didn't. I honestly loved it because I was just getting into the heavier stuff at that time. And I was just like, I don't understand what's going on here. Why do people not like this album? And it's just always fascinated me because I just remember how divisive that album was when it came out, like in the moment. I was just like, what is happening?
It was crazy. It was the one thing that everyone agreed upon was because for many years, Cryptopsy fans were already divided. There was like the Lord Worm camp and the Mike DeSalvo camp. And there was this weird, like, we like one, we don't like one, but they definitely all agreed that they hated me. So I'm all about bringing people together, which is what I did. So, but no, it was crazy. I think a lot of the backlash happened, and it's something that's happened. I've been doing a lot of interviews. So I think that we just mishandled the situation very badly from our point of view. We were very like, fuck you, you don't like our thing. It was immature of us. And I also think that our label could have helped us structure a response better, handle that. And I don't understand why they actually weren't involved. Maybe they were, and I just weren't seeing the emails, but we were definitely very defensive and quick to tell everyone to fuck off, which is in our defense. People were telling us to die. So we got a bunch of death threats, and it was It was a time. It was a time. You know, this is my first big, huge release. So excited to be finally doing that, and it was just monumental, angry mob of people sometimes. But at every show I play, there's always people that come up to me that say, "I was afraid to tell my friends that I like the Unspoken King."
Oh man, the unspoken word about the Unspoken King.
Yeah.
It's a great album.
Yeah,
it has its moments. I like the song "Bound Dead" is a very cool song. It weird movements and I don't know. Had we done it as a side project called The Unspoken King, it would have gone over much better.
This is another music question I want to get in there because one of the podcasts you were interviewed in, you talk about growing up with nu metal and
huge nu metal child.
Same here, both of us. And I just the first question, this will be like a two-parter, is just like, you know, what nu metal bands did you grow up on, and what do you think of this nu metal revival happening right now?
Well, number two, I love it. I really do. I think it's super fun. They can keep the cheese out of it, which I think a lot of the newer artists are. I think that was probably the biggest problem with nu metal, was that it was really cheesy. But bands that I grew up on, very simple: Korn, Mudvayne,
that's my favorite.
Linkin Park. There was a Disturbed moment.
Always a Disturbed moment.
That first record, but they also came through Montreal like 3 times in a short period of time, like on multiple tours with Kitty, and I can't remember what that was, with Mudvayne, I think. Could be wrong there, but I was down with the sickness for about a few months. Taproot. The Taproot had this weird thing with Montreal because they got Pulse Ultra signed, and Pulse Ultra was like the big nu metal band from Montreal. If you don't know who Pulse Ultra is, you need to go listen to that. I think the album's name is Headspace. Oh, it's amazing. Their guitarist Dominic Cifarelli is a great guitarist. Great guitarist. So, but Pulse Ultra, the album's called Headspace. Killer, totally underrated nu metal album, which was huge because they were from here. They were on Ozfest. It was like really big when they did 2 albums, I think, or one album, 2, I can't remember, but that was great. And then it just, Sepultura Roots album was huge for me. Just huge.
That's
just
a classic,
so heavy.
Yeah.
So heavy for me. Anything with a guitar solo was my dad's music, because I grew up very lucky that my dad liked metal. More so like the radio rock version of metal. So like the Black Album from Metallica played a lot. I remember listening to that in the car. Guns N' Roses. So anything that had a guitar solo, for me, growing up in my teens, it was like a rebelling. This is my dad's music. I don't like this.
Is it over yet?
I didn't understand it. And even like before 3 Mile Scream, I was trying out for these bands with this virtuoso guitar guy. And I was like, why do you do that? I just don't understand. I'm like, maybe I can and we were smoking back then. And I was like, maybe your solo can be like, tell a story that fits into my lyrics. I was trying to, and then finally I got into Dream Theater with Train of Thought. That I got that record, and then I was like, okay, I understand guitar solos. I understand what they mean. And then I got, into the whole new wave of early heavy metal, the American heavy metal, the Lamb of God, and then into the Kill Switch, into the Unearthed, and then Strapping Young Lad. That was one that just blew my mind. That was something that just opened up a lot, the extremity of his vocals. And that was really like Matt, you should listen to Devin. Devin should be an influence for you. So I pushed and started listening to a lot of that because I love Mike Patton. So it was like Faith No More, Mr. Bungle, Phantomus, and people were like, if you like this style of vocals,
record too.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. If you like vocals like this, then you should listen to Devin. So that happened, and then I got Cannibal Corpse's Kill, and that really just blew my mind of how you can be so clear, so brutal, and that was it. And then I fell into Cryptopsy.
That's a drink right there. Sorry.
Basically, at that point, I'm empty, but I'm going to crack this.
Yes, please.
Yeah, let's see that opened.
Oh, that's nice.
It's melting nuts.
Yeah,
I had
honestly,
one yesterday.
When you listed off those nut flavors, I was just,
It's amazing. But Vizian Pesce does a lot of really cool things. He's actually really a metal brewer. He actually designed their logo. He's like, they're from
Really?
Quebec City, both of them.
Wow.
And he like is a metal dude, like a real metal dude. And he's been doing these series of classic Quebec metal bands collabs recently. Yeah, what he calls them? There's a series for him. This something. Sid. I can't remember. I don't want to fuck it up. But he's been doing like a bunch of stouts and a bunch of weird beers for bands as a contract brewer. I think that's so cool.
That's awesome.
It's amazing. I would have put coffee in it. It's amazing.
Well, again, cheers to this new one. I know you just
Brewtal.
took a sip. Brutal.
Yeah, that was really it. That was my whole progression of extreme vocals fell into that. And when I was in Cryptopsy, we did the Unspoken King, and then I asked Donald, I'm like, what CDs should I get to inspire myself vocally? Because you got CDs at that time. And I went into an HMV, which is a record store here in Montreal that doesn't exist anymore. And I picked up Cattle Decapitation, Decapitated, and one more, I can't remember. And that was it, Travis Ryan. It was The Harvest Floor, I think is the name of the CD. Just incredible. And then I got to tour with them about 3 years after that. Became friends, watched them perform every night. It's crazy. And then pushing myself, just really just trying to harness in never being satisfied, which is what Cryptopsy is. We're never comfortable, always critical, especially when you have a producer in the band that has magic perfect ears that knows exactly when you fucked up anything on stage or you could be better, but basically. So we're just constantly pushing ourselves to be better, trying to be the best musicians that we could be, or extreme vocalist for myself.
That's awesome to hear. And I think any fans listening are going to be like pretty stoked about that.
Before we segue into the last bit of what we want to discuss, would you, or do you still ever do the clean singing, like the opera inspired, the Cirque du Soleil? Like, do you ever see yourself, like, if for some reason Cryptopsy just ended it tomorrow, could you see yourself doing something like that, like going back to on stage, but just in a different facet like that?
I absolutely think so. I actually had a band going for a while. It was in 2011. We released an album. It was very cool. It was a big project. It was like The Unspoken King happened, and then Cryptopsy was in this weird state. And I was hanging out at this jam room a lot with these cool musicians, and they were like doing more of like a punk rock thing. And the guy had a studio, so I was like, Pavlo, just let me track something to one of your songs. Like, I like this song. Let me see what I can do just for shits and giggles. So I went in there and we tracked something. And then we started jamming. And then I remember the moment I was like, I think I want to be in your band, but you got to be much less punk rock and more progressive rock, more Tool, A Perfect Circle style. So that was the creation of a band called The Era Of. And we released an album called Pelican Beach. And as always, I can't just do things normally, but I wrote a book of short stories to go with the album. And I calculated and I researched, I Googled online, the average reading speed of every human per minute, like how many words per minute. So I wrote the amount of words per minute so that an average person could push play and read the book of short stories and finish it within the time frame of each song. So that happened. That was cool. That came out. We self-released it. We had a whole bunch of issues finding a drummer at one moment, and that just sadly dissipated. But it was I still listen to the tracks. They're really very catchy, very cool, progressive rock. Not so progressive, like rock, but not standard rock, creative rock. Very interesting. And I loved, there was no harsh vocals on it. I wanted to do something completely different. And I love doing clean vocals. I'm a singer, like at the end of the day. I was asked to be on the new Callidorus record. I don't know if you know who they are, but crazy, amazing band from up here. And they wanted me to do clean vocals. So that's what I did on their track. So I love it. It will definitely come back. And I love going to karaoke and slaying a mean clean vocal song.
What's your go-to for karaoke?
There was a karaoke. My condo where I am, there used to be a karaoke bar behind my house. It's closed now, sadly. But I would walk in there, and they would just put on "Creep" by Radiohead.
Nice.
And I had to sing it.
Oh wow!
Because and then they'd buy me beer, and it was a good problem. But
that's amazing.
My go-to is actually Creed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know my vocal range, and
I've done that too.
Yeah,
I've done that too. Yeah.
I've
made some mistakes in karaoke though. I've made some mistakes in karaoke. I tried to do Thunderstruck once. It didn't work.
I mean, that's a certain kind of vocal style that.
And also it's because I was in a cover band for a moment that never played live, but we were jamming towards it, and we were doing Highway to Hell, but I guess I was a bit inebriated when I tried to do Thunderstruck, and I hadn't clicked that they had changed the key of Highway to Hell, and already Highway to Hell is not as high as Thunderstruck, but it didn't work, and it really wasn't good.
Oh man,
that's amazing.
Yes.
We love it. We do it all the time. Chris is a great singer. Chris nails. You know what Chris is really good at? Cryptopsy Chris. Bon Jovi, Living on a Prayer. He's so good. He can nail everything. It's amazing.
Yeah. Okay.
Would love to be in the bar. Like, just, we didn't know you were there. And the Cryptopsy crew comes in. We're like, all right, let's see what they're going to play.
Because we did that. We played Japan. I played Japan twice with the Cryptopsy. The first time was at Loud Park in 2012, and you go to these karaoke boxes afterwards. Such a funny night. A bunch of Foreigner.
I mean,
back to my dad again, right?
You got to respect the classics, though.
We're terrible with segues, but speaking of books, we do want to get this in that you collaborated on some children's books, and this ties into the fact that you're a full-time child care worker. Is that correct? Or am I saying
that's right? I'm an early childhood educator. Yeah.
There we go.
So I studied right as I joined Cryptopsy. I finished up my 3-year program of becoming an early childhood educator. So I studied to work with young children under 5 before going to school. So basically daycare is the word that everyone uses, but there's a lot more going on than that. But but I always work with kids. That was always my job. That's what I did. I worked in summer camps. That's where I met my wife. And it was the only job that I cared about, that I wouldn't just call in sick and not show up and sit on my couch for a day instead. So it was the only thing that made sense, was that if you're going to do something for the rest of your life, or at least for a portion of it, it was going to be working with young children. So I did that. My wife is a very creative person, and she's been wanting to collaborate with Jeannie Bond, who did the layout of the can. So them together created Micellia Media, and they wrote this book together. So Jessica wrote the words and thought it all out, and Jeannie did all the illustrations. But it was through discussions and conversations with me to try to keep it as educational as possible, to try to keep it as open as possible, so that it can cause interesting discussions between the parents and the children. And especially the first one was written really like that initial lockdown. She had the idea like immediately, and within like 3.5 weeks, the book was out. So they hustled and got that done. And that was Today We're Staying Home. And everything you see in that book is something that we did with our kids, because we have 2 young kids, and being in a condo, 2 young kids, when at that lockdown situation in Montreal, you had to be creative. So we did that. And then she just released the second book, Hidden Rainbow, which is also based upon, we would go on walks with my kids, and there was a whole rainbow movement where families were painting rainbows and sticking them on the windows to like spread joy. So we invented this other book of like hunting for rainbows and how to use rainbows, and it developed into a art therapy method where we can use art to express emotions, which is very hard for young children and for a lot of grown-ups. Luckily, musicians, we found a way to fulfill our emotional needs cathartically through our music and art. So that's something that we wanted to do with this new book. So that's what we did with that book. And then I'm super happy with that. And we have them at my work, and the kids love them. Especially the Hidden Rainbow one. There's something about the colors and Jeannie just did such a good job with the illustrations on it. Really captivates kids like to the fullest. It's really interesting to go into a classroom and see a whole group of kids playing a game based around your book. And Jessica created like work activities that parents can use and educators can use. For the first book, she's working on the second one. There's actually an art therapist that also collaborated on this, and her name is Yanni Poon. Also helped collaborate on this, a friend of Jeannie's and a friend of Jessica's. They worked really hard. I sent it out to a few people. I was like, Metal Injection. I was like, Albert, a Decibel. And they picked it up, and I was super stoked. And I was actually in the 200th edition of Decibel magazine. Is a picture of me and my wife with Justin Norton, great dude, excellent column writer for Decibel. Journalist is the word I was looking for. Excellent journalist from Decibel that wrote an article about the books. It's amazing. And the picture that is in there is my 4-year-old daughter that took it, which is amazing. Awesome. You have to see the amount of pictures that we had to take to get that one picture right. You know, it was hilarious. Like, and she's like, no, that's a good one. And we're like, no, look, Daddy's head is cut off, but you can see the books. It was like, no, it has to be. She got it. She got it. It was hilarious. It's really funny. It was amazing. Got her standing on a little, anyways, it's funny. Standing on a little chair. Yeah.
I mean, having collaborated on those too, is there a future of more books to come?
Oh yeah, definitely. Jessica's very tied up. She's in school. We got 2 young kids. She's very involved with Vox&Hops. Vox&Hops has really exploded. She helps me coordinate a lot. So she's had to put some of her projects on the back burner, but there will be more books. There'll be more activity guides. That's what she did. She made an activity guide for the books.
That's awesome.
So there's definitely more things coming from Massilia Media. They're excellent, very creative humans. I love watching them just work. But Vox&Hops is just so much going on. I have crew now. I have a photographer, a videographer. Mihaela Petrescu, the photographer, is amazing. I grew up watching her take pictures. Every show I go to, she's there in the photo pit. I was like, how do you? She's like, oh, I'm going to 4 shows tonight. She's like, just nonstop energy.
Wow.
So happy to have her on board. Chris Kells from The Agonist. I grew up with him. I've known him since like 1997, 1998. And here we are now working together all these years later for the love of metal and craft beer. I have Jerry Monk, the metal architect, who I met. We have to talk about Thirsty Thursdays. Thirsty Thursdays are something very, very unique that happened during the pandemic. I realized that I could connect with people, mainly for my own enjoyment, just hang out with musicians that I toured with, alumni that I enjoyed and didn't have a chance to connect with via Zoom. I didn't realize this was a thing until the pandemic. So I just started doing that. I just opened up a link and I put it on the internet and I was like, join me on Thursdays at 8:00. And 50 people showed up. I was like, this is really cool. I was like, let's do it next week, but at a different time so UK people and European people can join and it's not 2:00 in the morning. 50 people showed up. I was like, okay, so let's do this again. And then like even more. And then I was like, yeah, we're going to have to do 2 of these. And then finally it's sort of like, I opened it up to the public and we just created this unique community. It's amazing. People just all across the globe come to Thirsty Thursday. People from Mexico, people from China, people from New Zealand, people from Australia, people from India. It's like the guys there from India. He's like, it's 8:00 in the morning and he's drinking with us in the future. It's amazing.
Hell yeah. This
was in the pandemic when nobody could leave the house, right? So it's just crazy. It grew. The community is insane. So from there, I have friends around the globe, like real friends that I've hung out with more than my friends this past year. We've celebrated birthdays. We've celebrated a bachelor party. We celebrated Christmas Eve. We celebrated New Year's together. We just so much fun. So eventually I started bringing in co-hosts because they were tired of talking to me. And it was just to keep things fresh and to try to keep everyone excited about it. And now I host when I went back to work in June full time, and in September I saw the world was like opening up a little bit more here in Quebec and around North America. So people were a little bit less available to connect every week. So I started hosting once a month. So I host the first Thursday of every month, and I bring on an alumni, and I interview them in front of the Thirsty Thursday gang. And then I open up the floor, and the Thirsty Thursday gang can ask them some questions. And that all becomes a new Vox and Hops episode, which drops the following Thursday. I think it's really cool. I really enjoy doing these. It's super fun. It's always fresh. It's interesting content, different content than just me asking a guest questions. So I've met so many amazing people here. So first off, I have to say Jerry Monk, the metal architect, who is a person that sends me music. He sent me 3 today, 3 albums, like, Matt, you're going to love these albums. So Jessica and I were like, we should do a playlist. What are we going to call it? We're going to call it Brewtal Awakenings. So we wanted to do like a Saturday post is really what it was stemmed from. We wanted to do something on the weekend that would create something. We were looking into morning post, something with coffee, Brewtal Awakenings. So I asked Jerry, would you be interested in curating these playlists once a month? He said yes. And he's been doing it ever since. He did such a sick job. So every month there's like a whole new playlist with like 5,000 hours of the best new extreme metal. And so if anyone is looking for new music to listen to, Brewtal Awakenings playlist is there for you. I've also met Philip Brousseau, who is a sick musician. He's got Overdose of Bacon. For the Brewtal North America project, all the music that you hear in it, he composed for me. I was like, I need like songs. Awesome. Like, can you write me like 5-6 songs, like blast beats, just songs? And he was like, okay. And he sent me like 4 or 5. And Kels was like, that's amazing. He's like, we have 22 things to do. I'm like, we need more songs. I was like, well, how many more songs do you need? He's like, 10. I was like, okay. I'm like writing Phil. He was like, no problem. The next day, 10 new songs. The kid's a machine. Wow. And then he just sent me 10 more. And then he's also very good at like visual designs. So he's been doing a bunch of work for that. He's helped like do some of the layout work for like placing the logos for people that aren't as comfortable doing that. He's been very helpful. He's a man. He's so happy to have him around and on board and helping me. There's also the review crew, which is something that stemmed from Thirsty Thursdays. So I have 5 people that write reviews every week for Vox and Hops, because I got to the point where I didn't have time to do my album of the weeks anymore. It escaped me.
It's a lot.
So they started writing reviews. We have and Philip is a part of Whispers from the Void podcast with Evan Welch. And that's a podcast that was born from Thirsty Thursdays. Philip lives in Quebec City in Quebec, Canada. Evan Welch lives in Boston. And they have a podcast together, and it's because of Thirsty Thursdays. It's insane, and it's a super cool podcast. They have 30 plus episodes at this point, and they do video reviews for Vox and Hops. And there's also Dan from Winnipeg that does reviews. There's just so many. It's amazing. It's
I don't know how you're remembering all this. It's amazing.
Yeah, kudos for sure.
Kels, when he works with me, he's like, Matt, how do you do it? Do you write it all down? I'm like, no, I don't. He's like, I remember you being smart in school, but I didn't know. And I'm like, I don't know. I should get a spreadsheet.
Well, it's working for you. Whatever you're doing, Matt, it's working for you. So
thank you.
Give yourself a pat on the back. I know like a lot of the podcasts that I really like to listen to. There's one called The Movie Crypt, which is with some directors, Adam Green, who did like the Hatchet series, and Joe Lynch, who did like Mayhem and stuff. It's a really cool podcast. That was the first one I listened to where I was like, I want to do this. And they do a thing called like the Steven Tyler Congratulations, because like Adam Green is a big Aerosmith fan, and he was like really down on himself the one day, and he was at a party with Steven Tyler, and he's like, dude, like you're doing really cool things. Like you've done like all these films, you've done a TV series, like you have a podcast, like, congratulations. So, hearing all this stuff out loud, like you're doing a lot. I mean, you got the band, you're a family man, you're working with family, you're creating communities, you got a great podcast. So I'm going to nick from The Movie Crypt. I don't know Steven Tyler, so I can't say that, but we could say Brewtal congratulations. You're doing great things, man, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm of course I'm tired, and that's the biggest stigma that the 2 young children and basically 2 jobs leads towards. But I have a new mantra that's been helping me through at least the past week, is that I've chosen to be here. This is the life that I wanted. So I should just embrace it and keep doing it and keep striving to do it better. That's my new mantra.
Love it.
Dig that.
Besides, like, I can't wait to hear the inevitable Vox and Hops like children's music soundtrack that's going to come out eventually.
Yeah, Jessica's been trying to get me to do kids music. She has actually. Yeah.
Well, whenever that drops, would love to hear that. We talk about, I don't know if you're familiar with Animal School Bus at all, but no. Todd, you turned me on to this. Can you give them a little bit more insight? It's fantastic.
I'm blanking on the father in this band, but it's a father and daughter. What's it? Doom?
Write it down.
Band.
They do it's like a grindcore band.
Yeah, it's a grindcore band.
It's so good.
And the daughter is on vocals, and they have a music video out. Yeah, you need to check this out.
Amazing. My kids are really into music. My son is really into Rammstein. I'm trying to switch that, but he really likes Rammstein.
Don't have him learn German early.
Yeah.
So he starts figuring out what they're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But check out this band. I think it's the dad's on guitar. I think he's doing guitar, and then I think they program drums and all that. But the daughter, she just sings about or screams about things she can do, and it's just amazing. And the backdrop to the music video is like cars on fire and stuff. And I was just like, don't quite get the juxtaposition there, but I love it. It's we stumbled upon that. Our go-to news site is the PRP. That's like our number one, and that just popped up, and I was like, all right, we have to mention this during the podcast for sure.
So we're waiting for that from Matt McGachy. Maybe not in the same vein, little more technical, perhaps, or not. But is there any other things that you want to say before we end this? You know, how can people stay in contact with you, with the podcast, with your band?
Yeah, you want to check out Vox and Hops. It's I release at least 2 episodes a week for the time being. I got over 270 episodes that you can go back and listen to. It's all available on my website, voxandhops.com. That's VOXANDHOPS.com. Cryptopsy, we got a new record coming. We have our cryptopsy.ca. Go check that out. That will redirect you to our Facebook where you'll see our post there. But to get ready, Brewtal North America is here. Try to get as many of these beers as possible. Encourage local craft beer, support, and interact with the artists that created this beer. It's very special to me that over 250 people have collaborated together to spread the motto of life, metal, and craft beer. The motto of enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. It's really very special. So do it. Be one of the first 40 people, and you'll pick up this amazing Heartbeat hot sauce bottle. It's so damn good. The Scorpion. I love Heartbeat hot sauce. It's never too spicy. It's hot, but it's not painful, and that's how I like my hot sauces. And just keep being yourself, and don't settle on being comfortable. If it's easy, it means that you're not doing it right. Choose a life that you want to enjoy. Everyone, please.
And with a craft beer.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Or two.
Or 3
or 4.
Yeah, however many. Just don't drive. Don't drink and drive. Just be responsible.
Please.
Just be responsible. Yeah, we'll end it on Brewtal. I'm gonna finish this last sip here.